Welcome to the Westminster tradition where we unpack lessons for the public service. My name is Alison Lloyd-Wright. I am a recovering public servant and Managing Director of the Good Trouble Group. Joining me today on Kaurna land are my fellow recovering public servants, Caroline Crozabalo.
Hello, Alison.
And Managing Director of Good Government Advisory, Danielle Elston.
Hello, Alison.
Today we are looking at the Human Handbrake, a new demos paper about why public service reform so often stalls inside government. The authors, Amy Gandon and Anna Garrett, have spent years interviewing UK government insiders, former permanent secretaries, advisors, local leaders, and they describe 5 cultural habits that quietly drag reform off course. And in fairness, they don't make it a blame game. It's not bad civil servants or bad ministers, it's just human behaviour. Under pressure, what happens when a system is scared of getting things wrong? So in true Westminster tradition fashion, we are going to walk through the 5 handbrakes, what they are, and the seeds of possible solutions that the authors suggest.
Isn't it a cool name just before we get into the 5 of them? The Human Handbrake.
I know. And disclaimer, I've drunk Kool-Aid on this one.
Me too, and it's why I wanted to do the episode because I was hoping someone might bring a contrarian take. But I think it sounds like the villain in an Austin Powers movie. Anyway.
So the report starts where almost every reform story begins, with fear. Dun, dun,
I like that.
Dun. It argues that Whitehall is hardwired for threat detection. Mistakes become scandal, so people keep their heads down. Hierarchy, moderation, control, all of it is a psychological comfort blanket. And the more media punishes failure, the more you get these over-engineered approvals and risk templates that are really about emotional safety more than they're about public safety.
Oh, hear. Sing to me, sister, on that.
The authors suggest borrowing from other high-risk fields, healthcare, aviation, my personal pet, where they stratify risk. Not every domain needs the same level of control. Some things should be safe to fail.
I mean, it's hard to imagine, though, that, right? Like, even saying out loud the words, this project is safe to fail. Can you imagine?
It's public money.
Uh-huh.
And the boss has to face the public who pay the money.
Yeah.
I mean, every 5 years in the UK, which I actually think gives them... So it should be easier there.
You don't want to uncork me on, like...
term limits.
No,
term limits, and term length and...
Me too.
And set election dates.
But it is public money, and the boss, the ultimate boss, has to face the public whose money it is.
Yeah.
So I'm struck through the whole thing, but about the fix needing, like, I'm increasingly struck by this and in life generally, that it's great to have this separation between ministers and the public service, but that also means ministers aren't a part of what it wants the public service to be and do. And I don't want individual ones on a flight of fancy turning over every 37 seconds. There is a portfolio I've been working with recently who have had 15 ministers in 16 years. They're a baby portfolio. And that is very, very hard yards for them.
Yeah.
But the risk culture, like, where does it come from? I mean, I'm not blaming our elected political class because I think some of it is like how the service like trains you to be.
I'm blaming the media, but I'm also blaming a system which engineers for threat, not engineers for success.
Yeah.
So when something goes very, very wrong, and I think you hear about Oakden as a useful example in South Australia and on which we've done a couple of episodes, the kind of response to that and the systems and structures that were put in place to make sure that something like that could never happen again.
Never happens again. That's always
were quite elaborate. Mm-hmm. And when something succeeds radically, we don't say, great, let's systematise that success and let's put in place these elaborate systems and structures to make sure that we can replicate that again. So I think it's engineered toward threat minimisation rather than success.
I'm thinking about, like, it's estimate season at the moment, and so there's a lot of anxiety about...
anxiety, sure.
Yeah, both of those things. But, you know, the Optus email that went to the wrong or the changed email address and then, you know, and like every article I've read has sort of said, well, actually, like, it looks like the government pretty much did everything that they could here, but they had more questions to answer about the changed email address and the 24 hours and the whatever. And there is something about the way that our structures work. And I sort of think, this is like a radical and terrible thought that maybe I can only think while I'm not in government, like that's just the cost of doing business, right? Like I think maybe we should be a little bit less frightened of the fire because actually it certainly appears to me like there is no burning bush underneath this one. Like they got an email that lied to them about their scale and scope of the outage. It went to the wrong email address. They got a follow-up email that said it was all fine 10 minutes later. Like does not feel like there is some
I agree.
fundamental failure.
Investigation pending, so just asterisks.
Yeah, of course. But like the fact that you get grilled at estimates, the fact that you get a shitty headline, like I kind of think that's part of the job.
Yeah. So maybe what's needed is thicker skin and a willingness to just go,
But then, of course, there's the flip side, right? Because then I remember Catherine Campbell sitting in front of a Senate committee saying, I don't know what you mean by robo-debt. And like too thick skin is like a terrible thing as well. So I think like that's the affect, right? Like how do you cultivate an affect that is robust to criticism but not impervious to it? That is the leadership challenge.
Some of it's the transparency. I worked with an agency where the secretary was made aware of a system that might have a problem in it. And instead of doing what I've seen done before, she kind of jumped straight to putting it on the risk register, emailed the risk and audit committee that afternoon saying, now, that sounds pretty normal, but actually I was like, that's like, didn't wait to see if there was a way to like, or maybe I'm wrong, maybe, all of those types of things. It was like, sniff's not good. My risk committee know more about a risk experts. I think there's a risk to this. I want them to see if they can tell me if they know more than I do. And I've got my remediation starting and all that kind of stuff. The risk culture is emotional, and those approvals and templates, I reckon, are about personal protection, not public value. Yes. And this leader was taking a public value approach, which is, I'm not sure I am the expert at how much risk this is. Here are some other people in my infrastructure who might be better at it. Here's what I know. Here's what I don't know.
Scale as against all the other scale.
What I know, what I don't know. Yeah. I'm starting some things. What do you reckon? And I just found it strangely refreshing. I was
agree. And maybe that's because one of the suggestions in the Human Handbrake is the idea of risk stratification, that we say out loud, we are not okay with a risk that sees people not be paid their benefits for weeks on end.
Yep.
But we are okay with a risk that we overpay people their benefits.
Yeah. Yes.
So our risk stratification is not okay with it. Like we don't want that to be, but that is something we're happy to experiment with.
Risk.
Yeah. Exactly. And so I actually think that normalisation of risk culture, that like as you just described, using some kind of just reasonably objective metrics around, we knew that was a risk. We wrote it down. It turned out that it didn't work and the consequences were as we expected, and so we stopped doing it. But we knew up front that it would be okay.
Because a lot of the work I do now, I end up having a conversation with agency leaders, which is essentially, what is your risk appetite statement? Do you have one? No. And which risks are you more prepared to tolerate?
Yeah.
And which risks are you not prepared to tolerate? And have you even thought about that? Because the default position is no risks.
No risks. Yeah.
We are not prepared to tolerate risk.
Oh, sorry, Alison. The default position is I'm very tolerant of risk. No risk.
The default position is innovation without risk.
Without any risk.
But part of it's because we do everything in the dark, and I don't mean that in the sense that culturally the service wants to be like that. But this podcast, people talk about risk. When they say that they love it, they'll often say, wow, what a risk.
Yes.
And I'm like,
is it?
There's a million of us, public servants, in the country. Yeah. We're all delivering public service and they are all delivering public service and public value.
We're one of the only podcasts with a very extensive legal disclaimer.
Yes, we get a lot of feedback about it. Thank you. But That's right. We're managing our risk, right?
But they were like,
said, not us.
but lots of the feedback we get is, isn't there a risk that by just talking about the craft of public administration, aren't you frightened all the time? And I'm like, isn't that interesting? Like, I think that comes to this thing. Like, I think the feedback we get about this lines up with what they're talking about in Whitehall, which is like, don't breathe, don't say how we do things. Like, it's like to keep your head down and out of the way.
Was it you who went to some pollster thing where they were saying how the young people are more interested in complex explanations as long as they're authentic, right? So they're actually happy to cope with a little bit more nuance as long as they think the person who is telling you the thing is authentic and true.
Yep.
And I really do feel that cultural shift of like the need for certainty in a kind of Newtonian mechanistic way is something that the young people are never going to get because they live in a climate challenged world, and all of the ways in which certainty is actually kind of unavailable.
Inherently unavailable.
That's right, in a precarious society. And so they think that is a change in how you approach risk that's generational. I did just want to return, though, to aviation. So this idea of a kind of, I know, because Alison loves it, but the idea of a near-miss culture.
Yes.
Like that is something we don't do well.
But again, I think that bias is toward threat, not success, right?
Oh, interesting. Say more. Hang on. What?
So the bias is to say, how do we stop a thing going wrong, rather than what were the conditions for success of the thing that we got right.
Yeah.
So there's this management thinker, and I can't remember his name, and maybe I'll find it for the show notes. Maybe I won't. Who knows? Where he's got this thing called the blueberry principle, which is to say, if we were all hunter-gatherers and one of us went out and came back with blueberries, we would say, where did you get the blueberries?
That's right.
How did you get the blueberries? What are the things that we need to do to also get the blueberries, instead of interrogating Danielle about why she didn't get blueberries? So
she got distracted.
I think near miss is really important, and it's a huge part of that safety culture of aviation and other things.
Yeah.
But I also think it reinforces that we're afraid of the threat.
Yes.
And I would love us to have the same systematised response to success as we do to failure.
That is a very good point. I just want to call a little bit of inconsistency here because you have said to me, I mean, inconsistency is the sign of a small mind, so like let's not go there. But you have made the point to me before that the public service should be the least interested in change and should be a lag because it is a different, and I think it's a risk point, right? Like we shouldn't be risky with our cabinet processes or our Westminster traditions because actually like it is a kind of fundamental infrastructural thing and you can allow other parts of the world to take risk before you take risks in the public
with
service.
Public money and public outcomes.
So I think that's the tension.
Yes, but I think it goes to that stratification point that we were making earlier. I think there are things on which we can tolerate more risk and there are things on which we should tolerate very little risk. And I think we don't do a very good job of identifying which is which.
Well, and now I'm thinking about that thing Danielle said the other day where she was saying we don't like to experiment on children, and I laughed at her and said all schools are an experiment on children.
Exactly, it's exactly that.
Yeah, right. And I think that is a thing where I think there is a very useful building out of language around risk stratification, and I endorse Demos and their work on this and encourage them to do more.
So let's move to the next segment, unless you had anything more on this one.
No, not at all.
Which is, I have to say, this is the one that really struck a vein with me, and not necessarily in a good way. This section is called The Policy Hero, which essentially asserts that the people that get promoted in Whitehall or Whitehall-style systems of civil service are public servants who shine in front of ministers. You rise by being articulate, clever, slightly theatrical, rather than by building delivery systems that work. And the paper is absolutely brutal on this. It says that Whitehall rewards short-term heroics over long-term stewardship.
Huzzah!
The person who rescues a failing project gets promoted faster than the one who quietly designed a system that didn't fail. I felt called out.
I must admit, I really thought like we are all the like singing, dancing heroes, and that's not. I really agree on this.
Yeah, I felt called out because I feel that this is really true.
Yeah.
I feel this is a really accurate description of the types of service and the performance of service that is rewarded in the public service.
Yep.
Yep, I agree. I mean, we've talked before about awards, and you have views on awards,
So many
Alison.
views.
And I was trying to find awards for a young person who's done amazing things and was horrified when you pointed to a bunch where this person would have to apply for them themselves. And I'm like, this is
They all anyway.
anyway, like this young woman is not going to do that. So how do we elevate their work somewhere? But we have talked about, you know, the person who runs payroll without a thing going wrong for 1,000 million years with a team that's really happy and has retention, but also like all the right things. They aren't getting anything.
I won't name her, but South Australia had for the longest time a cabinet officer who was the
epitome.
backbone
Yeah.
of
Held it together.
sound government decision making across decades in South Australia. So, what's the fix here that's suggested in the paper?
So they suggest stuff which actually I never believe in. So this is the one where I really didn't agree with the fix. Not because I agree with the problem diagnosis, but they talk about changing performance frameworks. How do you change who you recruit for, you know? And then they had one about ministerial modelling of new behaviours, which was hilarious. But the first two, I think maybe I am just too black and white in the way I never think that those performance frameworks and recruitment things actually change how you recruit.
Yeah.
But I want to say, I said this out loud to some New South Wales public service people the other day, and they were like, oh, God, no. Like, genuinely, the capability framework has really changed how they recruit in New South Wales.
Very good one, I would agree.
But good, but also actually what they use.
Yeah.
And so I was like, oh, that's interesting. So I think I am biased on this and I don't think it works, but actually I think very smart and good people tell me it does.
Yeah, I reckon some of the recruitment stuff, and I'm with you, like, goodness me, do we put hurdles in recruitment that make it slower and don't make us better, more diverse, recruit anyone better? But I was
And
just
if you haven't, go listen to our episodes on picking the scab of recruitment.
But very evocative.
I think merit has to mean, like, can play nicely with others as well. And not just across divisions and agencies, but with stakeholders, and, like, even shock horror, not see other jurisdictions, states or levels of government as some kind of enemy. Like, even references, right? Imagine, like, if you were forced to, like, do 3, but one had to be, like, a peer chosen, even chosen by someone else. Like, I don't know, someone who worked for you and only one boss. So instead of, like, collecting up the people who you'd been sycophantically sucking up to for the last 10 years.
Oh God, and I would hate this.
And making them your last 3 employers. Like, the rigidity of some public sector recruitment on it's got to be your last 2 bosses and it has to be your current boss. And it, like, effectively that just makes it a game of, like, managing up. That's the whole game, and that's how then you go up, because you just manage up. But that does not reward you in any way for spending half a day on something that is better for everyone but is not your business, or, like, is in not directly yours. So how do we like, seriously make that, like, flush that out?
So what really struck me about this is the reward of, like, polish, articulation, public speaking.
Fast, like what I think of as Oxford debating skills, right?
Yeah,
like
fast thinking,
response, like ability to say a thing that
Threat
sounds
minimisation,
very
comfort.
Yeah.
And I get why we value those things, because you watch a CE tank in front of budget and finance or estimates and you'll be like,
Oh, that's hard.
Yep. That's why we think those skills are important sometimes.
Yeah.
But how do you value those deliverers as well as those policy heroics is an interesting question.
It is, and we all know people who are terrible at interviews and terrible at self-presentation, and who are
excellent at their job, and often more thoughtful, more thorough. Not always, but, like, that's often a characteristic of people who tank in interviews.
Yeah, and so I do think that, like, your thoughts about referees is a good one. And in fact, I gave I shit you not, half-hour-long reference the other day by phone. Do you think that's
I gave 3 this week, and they were like 40 minutes each.
Yeah.
Oh my
This week I did 3, and they were like 40 minutes each.
Yeah. So having done that one of the questions was, in fact, can you describe a time where the person...
I'm not applying for the job. Why do I have to describe a time? Sorry.
No, I was totally there. In fact, halfway through I went running and I was like, well, they can just listen to me run while I talk, because this is taking literally so much of my time. But one of of the questions was, can you describe a time when this person who reported for you worked well with their peers and did stuff for their peers that wasn't for their own interests? So I literally got asked this question and I was like, great question. And I thought about it. I'm like, yes, let me tell you about this kind of time and da-da-da-da-da. So I do think there is something about more thoughtful and judicious use of references and kind of asking about that broader set of behaviours.
But not taking too long while you're doing it.
I mean, honestly, I felt like I should have been paid at the end of it because I felt like I'd done the recruiter's job.
So there is some various academic nerds, again, will I find them for the show notes? Who knows? Have done some work about an equation of trust, like they've mathematically worked out what trust looks like. Anyway, and it's like competence and reliability divided by self-interest. And I think it's the self-interest part that we're actually offended by here.
Yeah.
And so it is that question of when have they helped others, when have they kind of selflessly put other people's needs ahead of their own.
Or the system's needs.
Ahead of their own. And I don't have a complete answer, but that's as close as I can get to an
answer.
I
like that because I think it gives the kind of right framing of, like, we also need people who are glib and fast on their feet and shiny and fixer-uppers.
We don't need more of them, I don't think, though.
Yeah, well, that's good because we're not making heaps of them.
Yeah.
And so, I agree. Like, I think you need all of those things. And actually what you want in the end are people who are interested in long-term what is happening for us all as a good thing.
Yeah.
That's the challenge.
And a sense that they will, put the system and the public and the minister and all others ahead of their own career self-interest. And if we reflect all the way back to robo-debt, I think that was actually a core problem in the executive class, was their own career self-interest sort of triumphed over
and not even
the
my
right
interest
thing
in
to do at various times.
Being promoted, but my interest in not being sacked or my interest in not being viewed as unhelpful or... no, that's such a good point.
Yeah.
Okay.
So the third section is about tribes.
Can I talk about this one?
You may.
I love this one. So, look, the authors describe Whitehall, and probably, sorry, should have said this up front, Whitehall is like a word they decide to use to describe UK central government.
Yeah.
So they have a good discussion of it in the paper that's worth a read. But anyway, they describe it as a series of professional villages with high walls. Policy doesn't trust delivery. The centre doesn't trust the frontline. Collaboration stops at the border. And they have this great metaphor about poking things over the wall, throw it over and see what's going. But what I love about it is they say it's not malicious, it's human. And I really think that's true. Like I'm the great proponent of the third housemate theory, that every house with an unpopular third housemate is the happiest of all houses. We gravitate to in-groups. It's how humans work. It's safer, but it is poison for reform if it kills trust, right? And so the fix to all of that is having at least some people with good connective tissue across those, you could call them boundary riders.
Yep.
I'm not ever convinced by the answer that you knock down the walls altogether, because actually people need an amount of simplicity and stratification and kind of, you can't work with everyone all the time because you
it's
are
a
working
mess.
on
How can you be across how can you be in every village at the same time?
Sure, but this is so this paper has one of my favourite quotes of recent times, which is, and especially reflecting on how long I spent in kind of DPC and central government, trust is hard to build with people you rarely meet and barely understand.
Yes. I loved this. They talk about face-to-face time. They talk about shared teams. They talk about exchanges, like having people from different...
Time and field, get out there, man.
And they even talk about neuroscience, which I love, because this is like our code for, magic from 500 years ago and, I don't know, God, for 1,000 years ago. Yes, neuroscience says proximity builds empathy. But it's true, right? When you get people in a room together, they stop seeing you as a pain in the ass or like a problem, and they start seeing you as a human with other problems that I might.
And you can
be a part
start to see, reflecting on our episode about regulators versus policymakers, actually, the black screen with the green text that is going to make it hard to turn that change in the system on.
Yeah. So an easy way to do that if you're a line agency person, and something I always push, if at all humanly possible, is get your central agency, whether it's your treasury, like depending on who you are, it might be someone different. You might need Crown. You might need get them to your planning day. You usually have one.
Yes.
Yeah.
They don't have to come for the whole day, but put them on before lunch so that they hang around, or before morning tea. So they hang around, give them something to do or something to tell you about in their bit of the world, and always have a spot for the central agency, because central agencies needs to get out and about, and I spend time telling them that too. But equally, like, you got to be invited sometimes as well. And the good spot to do it is if we're all going away to figure out what we're doing next year, let's get Treasury, DPC,
Absolutely.
Crown, depending on the kind of work we're doing, out to tell us about what they think of it or how they can help us.
A leader we have all worked for once very geniusly invited the under-treasurer on an overseas ministerial trip to look at a particular reform, so that when they put the budget bid in for that reform, that under-treasurer had seen what it looked like in practice in that other place.
It's very powerful. In fact, I've been, and this is really just a shout out to a genius bit of advocacy, someone in Queensland has built a example of the youth justice system, 3 different versions of the youth justice system in a single container. So on the left hand is what we put our kids in, so fluorescent lights, da-da-da. In the middle is what the Spanish put their kids in, and it's like this beautiful little bedroom and a thing and a thing. And then on the right hand is what they think the system could look like. And they're just inviting people to take a half an hour tour through the container. And I just thought that.
Yeah.
Like 100%. Just when you physically walk into a room with fluorescent lights and kind of nothing, you feel different.
I took a justice team from DPC to visit prison in South Australia for a whole day, and that was an eye-opening experience.
It was. They talked about it to me afterwards.
So if you're in a central agency, get out there, invite yourself. They would be so happy to show you what it looks like on the ground.
Yeah.
And if you're a line agency, invite your central agency colleagues. The amount of times I've had conversations where they're like, what's the first stage in the cabinet process? And I'm like, the first stage in the cabinet process is you call your cabinet officer
and talk to them.
And invite them to some of the brainstorming meetings about the problem you're trying to solve.
Yep.
But I think there are more conscious ways of building that architecture. So I'd like to shout out to the Brighter Beginnings team in the New South Wales government, who have been set up in education, and they are trying to do stuff across the really trickiest space, which is education, health, and a bit of human services. And
that's
whatever.
really hard.
And they've been doing that work for, I think it's like 2 to 3 years now. And what they talk about is how it has taken them that long to really start hitting their groove. So it's taken them 2 to 3 years of kind of coming along from education to go and work with other people, showing that you're willing to give a bit of money and kind of offer a thing and be part of a solution and kind of, so there's something as well about we all need to invest in different ways of working. It will not, if you want to do a big multi-agency thing, you can't just rely on it kind of happening. You're actually going to have to invest in people who have time and space to go and do stuff together.
Yeah. And again, if it's not rewarded and valued.
Yeah.
Before we do the next one on simplicity, I just got a couple more on this one. One, and they're both reasonably practical. The first one is, I appreciate and really do understand the need for security in buildings, and particularly in South Australia after the tragic murder of Dr. Margaret Tobin, and so we have to keep our people safe. It does create really odd moments of separation, and I'm often standing at the security desk because, of course, I will always have to sign in, and that is excellent and completely
You're not
fine.
a government person.
And that's I should feel different. That's the way it should be. But I'm often going to facilitate cross-government things, and there is a line of people. Often we start a bit late because no one accounted for the fact that 18 people would have to sign in at once to come to this meeting. And it's just something kind of symbolic about queuing to visit each other, and you can't wee in most of these buildings unless you find someone with a pass.
God,
and so it's just so embarrassing where you're like, excuse me, do you have a pass?
That someone has taken to the men's for no one.
So it's small and symbolic, and I don't know if you can do anything about it, but just thinking about how they feed cultures. The other one is communities of practice are a really good antidote. And I think ANSOG's regulator COP is this really standout success of cross-jurisdictional, cross-disciplinary, and it's really active. Yeah. My understanding is that is because of as is always the case, the commitment of a few committed, tireless individuals who started getting it going. It wasn't a government directive, it wasn't an ANSOG directive. and many years later it is like thriving and people just love it and value it. So like, let's do more of those. Let's have an ICT change one and a people and culture one and a program managers. So start one in your own field. And if you want some help...
Don't wait for someone to start it for you. That's 100% the right answer.
You know, if you want a bit of auspicing because you've got it moving now and you're like, sugar, we need rooms and we don't, like, call Ansogaripa or someone or your DPC, but just do it. I don't think you need as much authorisation as you think to put people who do your job in a room.
Yeah, hard agree. Says Alison, the author of the Policy Network, where you started doing that again in SA. Like, you just do it.
You just do it, and people can be offended later.
Yeah, but it turns out they're not. It turns out they're all desperate to kind of be part of...
On this one, ask for forgiveness. Like, you're putting people in a room, for God's sake. It's not a risk. Back to the top one, right? There's no need to fear it.
Yes, stratify that risk.
Right.
Yes.
So the fourth one is about the bias to simplicity. So government's natural instinct is for, and this is Caroline's going to have to wait for me to finish before she bursts out of the blocks because this is so one of hers.
It is.
The natural instinct of government is for tidy, uniform, national or statewide solutions. It feels fairer, it feels safer and more legible, and the cost of that is really huge. So they kind of argue you lose that local texture, you turn living reforms into traffic light spreadsheet, troubled families, transforming rehabilitation. Both started as kind of context-rich local experiments. They were going somewhere, they were building community, and what they ended up with was flattened when they were scaled up. So the authors suggest a different kind of fairness, which I love the idea of, but I question the politics of. Equity, not sameness. Firstly, I feel like the conversation about equity in Australia is hard to have, and I'm not sure everyone understands what it means. You can have... I think children understand what it means better than grown-ups. You can have high standards without identical delivery, but you need the data that helps you trust the difference in real time and contextual feedback instead of these really blunt compliance reports.
Yeah, this one is like 100% my bugbear, and I think it's because at the moment I'm in a national advocacy role, and so what I find is lots of national advocacy groups really think the answer is the Commonwealth should tell people. And I'm like...
And then pay for it, presumably, at the same time.
Oh, well, see, I'm fine with them paying for it, but it's the telling people that I find, like, less helpful. And so, but I really try to take seriously that impulse of, like, well, why do they want the Commonwealth to tell people? And it's because their experience of kind of state services or local services are variable. Right. And so when people say they don't want a postcode lottery, which is very much a thing you hear in the social services, they mean they don't like this idea of variability. And I think the answer, which I really liked in this piece, is there's something about if you're going to get people comfortable with variability of inputs, you need to be really clear about what the outcomes are. So I am wildly comfortable with variability of inputs, actually. I don't think that it looks the same to deliver a school in Uradla as it looks to deliver in Daveron Park, and I think that's perfectly fine and that those things look different. What I'm not wildly comfortable with are the different outcomes for the kids from those things. And I think we are at a beautiful moment. I don't mean to sound like a Silicon Valley person, but I'm going to. Like, we actually have more information about our citizens and how they're going and what services they're using and how they're tracking across a lot of different domains than we've ever had before. And we can use that in much closer to real time to give confidence that we are actually getting the right outcomes or to change what we're doing so we move closer towards the right outcomes. And I think that's the shift in public conversation that we want to have. And I think watching some of the conversations around NDIS at the moment, for example, like I really think people are a little bit comfortable with the idea, like this choice and control conversation is a conversation that says, I don't want a widget, I want an outcome, which is a dignified, independent, fully inclusive life.
Yeah, universal, not uniform.
Exactly. So I think actually we've gone some of the way on that, but then kind of we get caught on, well, what's in the NDIS case it becomes, well, the widget is X amount of money, right, like, or given in a particular way, and then you have to have a different conversation. But I don't think we should give up on the idea that government can put out a certain amount of resourcing into the system and that resourcing might be used for different things for different communities. Because if we hold tight to the idea everyone gets the same, we are definitely, we're designing the chair that doesn't work for anyone because we designed it for the medium person, but it turns out the short people and the tall people are all uncomfortable.
And I mean, I think the governments are often in the business of if this, then that, right? Mm-hmm. And we try and simplify the if this.
Yes.
Because we want to make it really neat administratively. So I'm thinking here particularly about drought, which for a long time has had a lot of issues because it's defined on like an LGA, local government area postcode basis, which means if you live on one side of the road, you're having a drought. And if you live on the other side of the road, you're not having a drought. And I just think the data and evidence that is available to us now, where we could more sophisticatedly say if this, and that this is not these postcodes, it's this rainfall change measured by this agreed mechanism, then drought assistance. Yeah.
That. And we're not comfortable, I think, because we kind of think all those boundaries were so hard won earlier. Like, it's very hard to redefine the boundaries and we have to have a different fight about that and whatever. But actually, like every community, that's why you shouldn't wait for a crisis to do the redefinition. It's very helpful if you try to get ahead of these things. And communities, I think, are up for the idea that what is happening now in lots of contexts isn't working.
So I completely 100% agree with both of you, and I'm really sitting here listening to you both wondering if perhaps I listen to more talkback radio than you do.
Squarely you do.
I'm
100%.
I'm our live
to zero.
I'm our live media monitor.
Well, no,
not talkback.
Boomer media monitor. Like that's the bit, right?
I don't know. That's true. Although I switch that up between my digital devices and my radio. But anyway, I try and make the algorithm send me left and right and Boomer and Z if I can. But in the morning, I have various radios on from 4:45 in the morning until 9 a.m.
Yeah.
And I don't disagree with what you just said. I am just hearing so many other arguments, and I wonder, again, the political masters still have to be on board with some of this because they have to be able to explain equity. I'm not convinced a lot of them can. And I don't mean the word equity. I mean you've just if this then that.
Uniform.
Universal, not uniform. All the things that we know are buzzwords. We'll get to that for Christmas. But we know what they mean, although we have to be careful that we all agree that we're talking about the same thing. But I'm not sure political masters have really good language to have that conversation. And if they don't, I'm hearing what you are saying, and then I'm hearing different demographics of people saying but. And so I don't disagree. I want to live in your world. I worry. I'm not worried. I'm not sure where is there yet with the people who pay the bills.
And I'm not sure that we have to wait for them.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. Like, isn't there a part where, I mean, you don't have to flick a switch and go from A to B across all of your policy settings, right? So I actually think part of this is we have to show that it works in some of the places where we have space and authorising environment, and then you use that 100%. As an example to show what the next thing are. But I will just offer as a kind of counterpoint to my own argument because, consistency, small mind. I did see a really interesting piece of research by E61 recently where they talked about how we have moved our social spend from highly targeted payment transfers to delivery of universal services. So they talked about like the switch from most of our money going out in employment benefit or disability benefit or whatever to childcare subsidy, NDIS, MBS, which are much less means tested and much more universally available and a bit widgetised. So I don't know where I sit on that, but I think can't we think that actually being more granular and locally contextualised is a thing to aim for in some contexts? I don't want tax law to be different for everybody, but services.
I have always been really taken by the idea that fines should be means tested.
I love this. Or not means tested, but ratcheted, right? Yeah, because my $400 fine
doesn't change your life.
Different when my 19-year-old gets a $400 fine.
On
that is like
apprentice wages or whatever. That's completely different.
Yeah.
Just on the simplicity, the one thing that is not systemic and is more about culture, and I'm about to wildly generalise, and I apologise to everyone like me who lives a very messy life, but I think public servants can tend to live tidy lives, pay bills on time, colour code their files. And I think designing policy suits tidy and uniform, like it feels right to people whose lives are a bit tidier. And it's easy to see how that thinking can kind of seep into external design because equity looks messy. And if you're really comfortable living in messy, that's okay. But if messy is really unfamiliar to you, and I realise I've overly generalised and Alison's about to potentially take my head off. But
yeah, I'm not with you. And I'm not with you because I don't think you can design for every individual circumstance.
Agreed.
All you can do is design for the base case and accommodate the exceptions. And otherwise you end up, I spend a lot of time in dealing with immigration-related matters. The solution to that for a long time was if you don't neatly fit in one of these visa categories, we'll make a whole new visa category. And you end up with this, deeply complicated system that's trying to meet everyone where they're at. Mm-hmm. And I agree with you that we need to be able to kind of accommodate a degree of variation, but at the same time, that's just not what systems at scale are designed to do.
So there's something there, what's that phrase, hard cases make bad law, right? That we don't like edge cases and that we definitely shouldn't litigate for edge cases because they are.
True.
I think there's something, when this criticism is made in this paper, what they're saying is Whitehall or the public service is limiting its ability to see a more diverse range of solutions because it equates neatness with fairness. I always say that. Neat. So many people who think neat means good. And it equates uniformity with safety and complexity with lack of safety. And I'm not saying we need to get rid of that everywhere, but we do need to increase this tolerance and the ability and build an infrastructure and a way of operating that doesn't think that it is wrong to be messy, which to your point, Danielle, I think is true. I think people do think it is messy.
Yep.
And that's bad.
Yep.
Messy is dirty.
But Danielle's taken us nicely to the final.
I was just about to say, hang on a second, how are you getting your minister over the line?
Yeah.
Because the fifth handbrake is political tempo. This is all well and good. I still think ministers have a much bigger job to play in public sector reform. I'm not quite sure how. I'm like, we can't just go running off to making risk decisions completely without, because if stuff's up and you're on radio and the secretary gets sacked or something, that is not going to encourage everybody to keep doing these things. So I don't think they're separated as much as we'd like to think they are. So ministers are operating at such speed, they're it's dog years. And I think it is true, and I do genuinely wonder how much they can go on like that. Reform takes human years. Those two timelines are not the same. The paper makes this really sharp point about, and we've talked about this before, prevention is about what doesn't happen. How do you prove that it was going to happen but didn't happen? Shout out to my criminal intelligence friends and a lot of regulatory friends.
And that scene in The Kingsman with the newspapers.
Yeah. And the audit system wants neat.
No better
We will
picture
put that
of
in
the
the
job
Yep.
of the public service.
100%. We will put that in the show notes.
And audit wants Caroline's neat outputs over there. So their provocation is stop pretending politics is going to change, which I think is a really interesting thing. I do feel like sometimes where everyone's just standing around waiting. Surely it'll stop being fast soon. I'm like,
Nope. Only getting faster.
Yep. Change the storytelling. Find ways to make that long-term kind of capturable and legible to people. More vivid narratives, more lived experience and real human indicators. So you're working with young people with how that looks, Caroline. How do you keep faith in reforms that are going to take decades?
Oh, see, I actually think this is almost the easiest bit, right? So we think that ministers desperately want something that they can announce, which I accept that they do, but we think that announcement looks like, I am going to build, 160 childcare centres by the next thing. And I think we all forget that the public, whenever you say a number like that, just inserts a gajillion.
Yeah.
It's just like Austin Powers, right?
No, it's Homer Simpson.
It is, right? It's like,
na,
I am
na,
spending...
na, hey. Na, 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 na.
Exactly, right? And so actually I don't think the ministers get the benefit of their big announcements, nor do they get to deliver them in lots of cases because it turns out they're really hard. I actually think this is where the craft of the public service is to say, hey team, this is what this initiative looks like in this community and it's coming to your community soon, and I get that your community doesn't have it now, but we're bringing it soon, and that is the story.
When soon? What? Like, how's my backbencher going to turn up there in 3 years?
Anyway, they say to you already anyway. It's going to be 2028. Oh no, it's going to be 2030. No, it's going to be 2032. But people don't believe the numbers anyway. Is what I'm saying.
And so my potentially radical take on this is that it's actually a role for greater public sector accountability.
Ooh, that's what my note says.
Ooh. Okay. So we were both at a conference recently and I was talking about how, you can get a minister across a thing that they think is risky if you're prepared to own it.
I agree with that.
And if
you say this was me.
And if this goes down, I'll go down with it.
Yep. Perfectly happy to.
And I think we expect ministers to own all the risk, and partly it's careerism and partly it's a desire to kind of stay in the anonymous, unnamed shadows. Mm-hmm. But I do think there is a role for public sector leaders to say, I'm going to back this in and I go with it. Right? And so if it fails, I am happy for you to throw me under this bus.
So I think there's a second rail to that, because I had two. My second one was then transparency. If you want the community to come with you for a long time, you have to tell them what you're doing. You have to be out in their community. You have to, share what's happening, even if it's not perfect. Share that yours is later because the last one, it actually turns out the build ran over and we're trying to figure out if we can get them a bit smaller, cheaper, whatever. I also think, the old talking more about what we do as public servants in the sense of why things are slow or fast, and instead of just kind of, again, it's the invisibility of it that loses the confidence. This whole, the political tempo part of it is the political master's relationship with the public and the electorate, and part of it is the services relationship with the electorate or the public, and how transparent they're prepared to be, and then accountable in the reverse.
But also, and to build on that, I've spent the week taking people on a journey of what government can do and what government should do, and what is their role, and what are things we can reasonably ask them to do for us, and what are things that we might not. And I am always struck by how actually niche the talent of policy and program development is, and how little we invite people to engage with us and the thought process that we go through in identifying why we've chosen to progress a certain course of action and not another.
What's a secret?
Yeah.
That's a good question.
I think there are lots of things we think are a secret, and I'm not talking about cabinet submissions and...
No, just the process of how did I choose this thing over this thing.
And can I just say that literally includes a lot of the people who are working in the systems that we design and fund. So, that includes making it transparent to clinical leads in public hospitals how the AHRA agreements are going, what rolling over will mean, what that means, explaining how these things work, and because it's not a secret. Actually, half of it's Googleable, but if you could just pre-cut it for some people who are busy, who are actually not just outside the system, even inside the system. Yeah. Why do we think? Is it because we think we're so
No, I don't think it's that. I think it's fear. I think it's back to fear.
I think it's back to fear. And I think it's that people who are engaged in, let's say, running a successful business in a particular sector are just not thinking through the same things that we are thinking through, just as we are not thinking through the same things they are thinking through. Exactly. And so a bit of openness and transparency about, okay, why would a government promote that particular sector over any other? Yeah. Wouldn't you be offended if they promoted a different one? Don't you think it would be offensive to those different ones if they promoted yours? Those kind of... exactly. Oh, I see it now. Yeah.
Yep.
So that's broadly the 5. Fear, heroics, tribes, tidiness and impatience.
T-shirt.
Each one human.
No, it doesn't have a good acronym.
What about if we kind of stop treating this public sector culture as destiny? Public service isn't unique. Other high-stakes systems have learned to balance safety and innovation and rewire their cultures. I like that they end this report by saying culture can be the accelerator, not the brake. So maybe that's the test, and I guess the invitation for action for our listeners. Could we use the same human instincts that make us cautious to make us brave? And what would that look like? The winner of the coveted Westminster Tradition Pod mug for this episode is Anne Elise Corringers, who very bravely reached out to strangers, e.g. us, to see if she could have a drink while she was in our jurisdiction, to which I enthusiastically said yes.
Normal people don't call their place of work or their place of living their jurisdiction.
But whoever's listening to this podcast recognises that's exactly the right phrase.
So congratulations for your bravery, and I deeply enjoyed the chat. A mug is winging its way to you shortly. That's it for this episode of the Westminster Tradition. Till next time.
Just some appropriately bureaucratic disclaimers. While we've tried to be as thorough in our research as busy full-time jobs and lives allow, we definitely don't guarantee that we've got all the details right. Please feel free to email us corrections, episode suggestions or anything else at thewestminstertraditionpod@gmail.com. Thanks to Pampot Audio for our intro and outro music. Till next time.